Hey everyone, it's Dark Energy with AoE Gaming, and I put together a demonstrational video on how to get the most out of your proc sets, as we seem to find ourselves in the Stonethorn proc set meta. So proc sets are different than skills or other abilities, as they follow a completely different rule set, and you can get the most bang for your buck if you know those rules. So to start off, I've picked a 5-piece craftable set known as Ashen Grip. The 5th trait will proc a 7,383 cone of flame damage on command. I'm wearing nothing else, just 5 pieces of Ashen Grip. This is for clarity, so there's not too much going on. I want to make this very simple and easy to follow. I do, however, have a two-handed greatsword of Unchained Aggressor. It's Nirnhoned with the Berserker glyph, the weapon damage glyph. It's gold. It does give me a 2-piece max stam bonus, but so we're using that to kind of show how the proc damage works. It could be anything, but 5430 was Ashen Grip's displayed damage. 5430. The other number is my light attacks, which can crit for a little more. But the 47, 29, those are light attacks. But the 5430 is the Ashen Grip proc, and it will be that no matter what I do, starting from right now. And where we get that number, it's, as you notice, it's less than the 7,300 it was listed. That's because this enemy target has spell resistance, and you've kind of got to carve through that. And so his spell resistance is mitigating some of my damage, and it's reducing the damage output of that proc. So let me add a piece here. 1-piece Damihaus. It gives me max stam and max Magicka. And you look, it's 5430 still. So proc sets, whether they're physical or elemental, poison or magic, they don't care about max resources. They don't care about how high you get your max stamina or your max Magicka. Now, your ultimates do, your skills do, your light and heavy attacks do, even your healing does. But proc sets do not care. So if we add the next piece, 1-piece Balorg, it gives us weapon and spell damage. Also doesn't change anything. So proc sets don't care about your weapon or spell damage. So neither one of those factors, including the food you eat, it doesn't matter what you eat, more Magicka, more stamina, more recovery. Obviously recovery is not going to change anything. Those do not factor into the proc set damage. So then what does? I will show you here. Let's put on 1-piece Valken Scoria. The first trait gives us 1487 spell penetration. So Ashen Grip is a flame proc, so spell penetration is what it's looking for. So we can carve through more of the enemy's resistance, his spell resistance. And as you saw, the 5430 is now 5650. It's incremental, but we've only taken one step in this direction. So let's take it further now. The Unchained Aggressor's Greatsword is Nirnhoned. Nirnhoned increases your weapon and spell damage. See the 1806? It just increases your weapon and spell damage kind of passively. But again, proc sets don't care about weapon and spell damage. So we'll pick an Unchained Aggressor's Greatsword Sharpened, 6133. We're getting physical and spell penetration from this Greatsword, and the damage has gone up even more, 6,133. So you're getting 3,200 more physical and spell penetration from Sharpened. So Sharpened is the way you want to go with weapon traits when you're relying heavily on proc sets, or looking to buff their damage at least. Now, I want to show a difference between the two-handed Greatsword and the two-handed Battle Axe, because there are more passives to pay attention to. You can see the Maelstrom Battle Axe is Nirnhoned with the Berserker glyph. They both say 1806. It doesn't matter that one's Unchained Aggressor or that one's Maelstrom. So if we go to the two-handed passives, look at heavy weapons. The swords increase your damage done by 6%. This is all of your damage output, including procs, whereas axes just give you a 16% chance to apply a bleed. So your proc sets aren't going to care about that. Now maces, that's a different story. They cause you to ignore 20% of your physical, the enemy's physical resistance, which will apply to physical procs, not Ashen Grip. So 5650 is the damage with a Greatsword, Nirnhoned, Okay, then we'll switch it to Maelstrom's Battle Axe and we'll hit him again. We're going to lose that Greatsword passive, 5404. See, the damage went down. And again, they're both Nirn-honed, but I wanted to pick a Nirn-honed axe and a Nirn-honed sword, so the sharpened wasn't a factor of comparing. So anyhow, now let's pick a different monster set, a 2-piece Slime Craw, because that gives us, on the second trait, Minor Berserk, at all times increasing our damage done by 8%. This is going to buff our proc sets. Of course, now we're losing the 1-piece Valkyd Scoria, the spell penetration, but now we've gained Minor Berserk, 5509. Again, we're still using the Battle Axe, not the Greatsword, and we're still using Nirn-honed, not sharpened. But we will step this up in stages here. Let's go from the Battle Axe, Nirn-honed, to the Greatsword, and you'll see it'll go up, 5745. And then we will go from the Nirn-honed Greatsword to the sharpened Greatsword with Minor Berserk. So now we get the 6% Greatsword passive, the sharpened, and the Minor Berserk, 6257. Now, speaking of Minor Berserk, let's talk about the other major and minor buffs and debuffs that affect proc sets. Major Berserk is something you can get from activating a Atronach or certain weapon sets like Unchained Aggressor or Heimjaws, medium armor set. And then on the enemy can be afflicted with minor vulnerability, which increases their damage taken by 8%, or major vulnerability, which increases their damage taken by 30%, something you can get from the Necromancer's Glacial Colossus. Minor vulnerability is much easier and more common to get. A Warden has access to the Fetcher Flies. You can use the Shock Glyph on a charged trait weapon, and I didn't have one here. I'm actually using an infused weapon trying to proc minor vulnerability. It's not going to work with that Shock Glyph, but having a charged trait weapon with a Shock Glyph is going to give them minor vulnerability almost every time. Now, Malakast Band of Brutality increases your damage done by 25%. You can't go wrong with this buff, especially in PvP. This is going to buff all of your proc sets, and 25% damage overall, but you lose the ability. Look at 7328, the highest we've seen it yet. You lose the ability to deal crit damage, but in PvP, that's not so consequential because you're not really focused on crit for the most part. I mean, there are builds, we won't get into that, but that's going to buff all your damage output and all of your procs. And again, the Lover Mundus, you want to make sure you're using this on a build that has a lot of procs. This is going to help you carve even further through the enemy's resistances. If you had before, you know, max Magicka or max stamina or recovery or something on there, pick the Lover and find another food or something to make up for the resource. Now, there's more to add to this that makes your proc sets even more deadly. So let's go and take a look into the champion points, because a lot of these will affect your proc set damage, and we're going to go over which ones and how and why, just real briefly. So, Spell Erosion, Elemental Expert, this is going to increase the proc sets if they're Flame, Frost, Magic, whatnot. Spell Penetration is going to increase your proc sets damage, again, kind of going hand in hand with that penetration, carving through the enemy's resistances. So those are going to buff the proc sets that are magic, not physical, not poison. Now, Master at Arms is going to buff the proc sets that are instant, all in one hit direct damage, not a dot, not an AoE. Well, actually, some AoEs are direct damage, but like Ashen Grip is a direct damage attack, 19% buff it's going to get. Whereas like Icy Conjurer is a damage over time, that wouldn't get a buff there. Now, Thaumaturge, this is going to increase the proc sets that have a damage over time, like Icy Conjurer, like Vipers, like Sheer Venom, anything magical or physical, as long as it's a dot, a damage over time. Now, similar to what we covered on the elemental end, Mighty increases your physical, poison, and disease damage done by 10%, and Piercing is going to be physical penetration, buffing your physical procs. Exploiter is kind of a special little buff here, increases your damage done to off-balance enemies by 10%, which will buff all procs as well. So we will show just a little bit of that. So if I uppercut with Dizzying Swing, It's going to knock the enemy off balance. See the swirling head? He's off balance now. Now, when I hit him, 77.57 was Ashen Grip. So when you knock him off, like a 73.28 without the off balance, we get 10% more damage, and he's off balance, and the proc set deals more. It doesn't matter if it's physical or if it's elemental, if it's a damage over time or a direct damage. Off balance is going to increase their damage taken by 10%. So if you've got a Warden, you can use the Cliff Racer, it knocks him off balance. Yeah, you've got a two-handed weapon, you've got the uppercut, knocks him off balance. So that's going to be something you want to do as often as you can. Now, then there's other debuffs like Major Breach, Major Fracture, Minor Breach, Minor Fracture. Sunder Flame set, I just equipped this. It's got a Crusher Glyph, reducing the physical and spell resistance. But then if you deal damage with a fully charged heavy attack, it's going to deal flame damage, but also give the enemy Minor Breach and Minor Fracture, reducing their physical and spell resistance by 1320. So if I equip that bow, that 5th trait, as well as the Crusher Glyph, is going to reduce their resistances pretty immensely. And then there, I hit him with it. Now I uppercut. They're off balance. 79.41. Let me do it again now. 8,013. The first hit that knocks him off balance with the uppercut, although the Ashen Grip proc let out, the off balance did not apply to that hit because it was like simultaneous. The next one did, however. And Major Fracture and Major Breach, like through Ellie Drain or the Warden's Shocks, are another way to reduce pretty big the enemy's resistances, making your procs hit much harder. And lastly, as we wrap up, I want to just have you guys take note on one thing. The last bit of damage shown from Ashen Grip was 8,013. That was actually exceeding the tooltip, which was listed to be 7,300. So that is what I mean. The tooltip does not register like the Minor Berserk, Major Berserk, Minor Vulnerability, any of the buffs like the Malakast Band of Brutality. So those kind of come into play, after the listed tooltip on the gear. You'll see the actual damage above the enemy player. So, all right, well, that wraps up this video. I hope that helps you guys get the most out of your proc sets. Head on over to my channel and check out my latest build that I dropped, the Mad Conjuror, as well as many other cool builds and different stuff. Well, that's it. Thanks, guys, for watching. Dark Energy with AOE Gaming, signing out.